Design. Emily, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So for those of you who don't know, we did us as role playing degenerates. We went up to the Chicago Fan Expo for the first time as a group, and it was a lot of fun. Although we were kind of disappointed because we were expecting to see a lot of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons stuff, Critical Role stuff. We did not see any of that. Emily, did you see very much when you were there?
No, I did not. There were only, I think, about two dice tables, like in the Artist Alley area, because that's really all I could get to.
Yeah.
But no, and every time I go to one, I look for Critical Role art, and I did not see any, which was a huge disappointment. Um, but I found you.
Yeah, it was kind
That
of
was
weird.
awesome.
We talked to most people we talked to D&D about saw some of us with our shirts, our D&D shirts on, and
Mhm.
they like stopped us today. You play D&D, and it was most people in the artist alley or whatever you call it, because I'm not too familiar. And then some
Mhm.
people just walking by, so it was kind of strange. And there was only one Vox Machina paint or art, and I got it, but it was ill represented. I felt like.
I know, for how big the fan base is. At this one in particular, I was very surprised on just the lack of fan art there was.
Yeah. So, do you play D&D now?
Um, I do not. Well, not yet. Not yet is the important term. I have definitely like gotten super engrossed in it. I now have the books. I now have dice. I am ready. But I'm a little late to the game. So, but my friends and I are planning to do one when I get back to DC, which is where I'm from. So, or where I currently live. Um, so I know a lot about it now, and I know a lot about Critical Role.
Yeah. So, how'd you get started with D&D? You haven't necessarily played yet, but how'd you get started with the culture and the game itself?
Mhm. Yeah. I have a degree in scenic designing
Mm.
for the theater. And so one of my shows I did last year, or last spring, I think it was, is a show called How She Kills Monsters. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
But it's a play about Dungeons and Dragons, which is one of the coolest things. And it's super good. It was so I was designing for this, and the show is about a young girl whose little sister is super into Dungeons and Dragons, but her older sister doesn't understand what why she's into it, anything about it, because her sister is fully like, like the popular kid,
Yeah.
and her sister's the little nerd. But then her family gets in a horrible car accident and loses her family. So then she rediscovers her sister through her little sister's dungeon master manual notebook, and so she goes on this epic adventure with like a version of her little sister through the storytelling of Dungeons and Dragons. So they go and they fight. The final battle is with Tiamat, um, and
Wow.
it's super good. You should super read it. It's excellent, especially because I think Dungeons and Dragons is a way for is one in one way a way for people is to escape their current circumstance.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot about that. It's a lot about loss and reconnecting, and then the older sister becomes a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan. Um, and uh, and continues on from there. So that's how I really like learned about it. So when I had to design for this show, I have to do a bunch of research, and that's how I was like, okay, well, I'll dive into Dungeons and Dragons. And so I started doing a bunch of research, and I designed the set based off of a Dungeon Master screen, because there's many out there that are just super beautiful and wooden and engraved, and so the whole back of the set was the screen, and then I did the floor based off of a dice tray, and kind of had this arena look to it, and it was super awesome. And so that's how I got introduced, and that is how I also received my first dice set, because my friend that I was working with gave it to me at the end of the
Wow. Wow.
whole thing.
Okay. So there's two things I want to say here. One,
Mhm.
say that is so it's a play, but is it also a book?
It
Or
is
the
not a book. It's just a
okay.
play,
Okay.
and
What
it's
is it?
called She Kills Monsters.
She kills. I got like chills when you were describing that. That's like such a good D&D story. She kills. Sorry, I have to write it down, even though I can replay this, I
Yeah.
guess. But um, so
You should
the
any person should read it. It's
I'm
super
reading it.
good.
That story
Good.
just sounds amazing. Wow,
Yeah,
that's
it's
crazy. It
super
kind of blows
fun.
my mind.
It's funny. There's bugbears that they fight, and
Yep.
kobolds,
Yep.
and the beholder is one of them.
Yes.
Um, and it's really the thing that my friends would send when I was, posting pictures about this who play Dungeons and Dragons. They just never. One of my friends said they never thought they would be able to see like I had a D20 dice up on there, and they just were like, I never thought I'd be able to see that on stage. So that was pretty cool, and it represents a lot of people and their interest.
Yeah, I know for a fact I'm gonna cry when I watch that or see that. I know for a fact.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but another thing I want to talk about is I'm redesigning my garage right now
Okay.
to look more like a dungeon. I
Okay.
suck. I suck at it. Bad. So, is there any
Okay.
way you could help me out with that?
Oh, of course I can. I absolutely love decorating, obviously.
I like can't figure out what looks good, and every time I try, I just know it doesn't look good, and I'm just like, man, I really want this to be good. But for everyone
It
watching this,
depends,
just
like,
go ahead. Sorry.
what type of dungeon do you want? Do you want like do you want it to be like an alchemist dungeon,
That's
or
cool. I didn't even think about that.
or
I wanted one side to look like a tavern, and one side to look like
okay.
a one side to look like an inside of a cavern. So a tavern
Okay.
with a T and a cavern with a C. Um,
Yep.
but now that you said the
But you can
alchemicus thing, now it sounds really cool. Yeah,
you can do a lot of really cool things for in a dungeon, and you can make it a dungeon cavern or dungeon tavern cavern.
yeah, the dungeon.
Um, you know.
Yeah. So for everyone watching this, because we have so many people that like TikTok creators and everything that we always talk about, like how'd you design your room and stuff. I'm saying it first here. Emily is going to design everything for us. We're going to start a new side business, and she's going to design. It's going to be a part of her business, is designing dungeons for all of us players to play in.
I would love that. Like it's just like the Critical Role sets that they
Yes.
currently have for
Yeah.
C3.
Yep.
Beautiful. And I'm like, I can do that because technically that's what I do. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, ooh, yeah, and it was the most fun designing because I did like the second level of the set was the Dungeon Master's, kind of cave. So I did like this whole like stone on the wall and shelves with books and and potions and things. So yeah, I
Mm.
love it.
Dang it. Now, we're going to talk after this because I've had like troubles. I was like, maybe I can use foam and paint it to look like stone because it's really expensive. But I was like, man, I can't really find a
Hmm.
good stone alternate. And I have like sample pieces. We'll talk after this. But if it looks good, we're going to put it all over our social media and we're going to tell everyone to hire you as a designer for
Okay.
dungeons.
All
Perfect.
right, that sounds perfect.
Okay, so let's talk about Critical Role. Um,
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of Critical Role. I talk about it all the time. But the one thing that I love
Hmm.
about Critical Role is, for example, I started playing D&D, and then I found out about Critical Role, and I started watching it, and my wife started watching it in the background, and all of a sudden she started watching Critical Role, and now she's playing a session with us, and all of our wives in RPD are playing our sessions with us, and half of them have seen Critical Role. What is it about Critical Role that like captivates people?
I think it's mostly, and they talk about this, but I think it's honestly mostly the storytelling. And it's also a way to, it's almost, I like to compare it to an audiobook, but a better audiobook. Just because, the descriptions are so detailed and in depth, and it just immediately draws you in, and they're so committed, and you're just you want to be there with them and you want to go on this journey with them. And to me, it's just mainly on the storytelling and the fact that you can really tell that they're all just really good friends and having a good time and able to make jokes and tease each other. And so it's very, very heartwarming
Mhm.
and enticing and just a super, super creative. So yeah, as a creative, I just absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's funny how that group can, and I talk about this all the time about having good groups in D&D, but it's funny how that group can have just as much fun, like rolling terribly in a tavern, as
Yeah.
and also have just as much fun fighting a dragon. You know, it's
Yeah.
just so fun to watch them do literally anything, even the shopping episodes. Like I'm like enthralled watching the shopping episodes, which most people consider are boring, but they're so creative. It
Oh,
sounds so cool.
yeah, I love them. I love them. And then you have, the Travis who hates shopping, which was why some things are absolutely hilarious to others who love shopping. So you have, the people who are really into it and the people who aren't so into it. But then they're like, how can I make this interesting? And it's just that improv yes and that they do so well.
Yeah, they do. They do it really well. Speaking of improv, did you? I know you were working at the Fan Expo, and we'll talk about that in a second. But did you get a chance to see any of the D&D improv that was going on there? The panel that the Quest Pros did.
No, unfortunately, I couldn't escape my table, but I
Yeah,
did hear about it through you guys. So, but I know of it. Did you go?
yeah. We went. Blew us away. Yeah, I mean it's just D&D improv. They have like uh, they have four different characters you can be: an antagonist, a fighter, a healer, and a wizard. And basically, someone raises their hand and they get like a 10-second audition, and the audience chooses who they want to be the part, and then it's just improv. They pick a scene and they start going. It was amazing. We actually hooked up with the Quest Bros after that, and we're gonna play a couple one shots next year at the Fan Expo. So if you want to play, let us know because we have a bunch of games going on next year. But it was really cool. So next year, if you ever get a chance, if you go back, I don't know if you're going back, but if you do
That
go back
sounds
next year,
that sounds incredible. I have to be honest, improv absolutely scares me to death. I am not the actor. I don't have that capability, which is why D&D a little bit scares me just because of the role playing. But if you're with friends, I'm not so worried. It can be fine.
yeah, it is. There is like a level of nervosity with it, right? Because you're acting, you're kind of like everyone I talk to when we talk about like let's play D&D or how'd you get into D&D, it's like I always thought that was too nerdy for me. Everyone says the same thing. I said it, my wife said it, everyone says it's too nerdy for me. And it's almost like you have to like kind of be a little more vulnerable when you're saying like
Mhm.
these things. So are you looking for like the right group, or is it a time issue with you right now?
No, it's just time. I'm just waiting to get back home. I have my other best friend coming. She's moving back to DC, and she's the one who runs them. So I was like, we're gonna do it. And also, my brother plays played, but he was 8 years older than I am, so we never like crossed paths in that way.
Yeah.
I knew he played Magic, but but I didn't know he played Dungeons and Dragons. But now we've reconnected, and I just learned that he watches Critical Role, which I had no idea. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna run a one shot for the family at like Christmas time. We thought that would be fun.
Ooh, that is really fun. That's really interesting. I did a podcast with someone. Her name is Bonus Mom on TikTok, but she's a 75-year-old grandmother, and they have a home game, and her son's the DM, her husband's a retired preacher. They have her niece and her niece's husband, and they play a home game. And I've always thought like if I could get my family to get into this, because it's so weird to like
Mhm.
my family's like old school, so it's like, Dad, I know you were in the Vietnam War, but do you want to play this game where you pretend to be an orc? And so I really want it to happen, but at the same time, it's like hard to do that. So
Yeah, my family luckily is really on board.
oh, awesome.
They're like, sure, because now I talk about it all the time. So they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And I said, okay, great, we're gonna do it.
Okay, let's talk about Lotso Design. What is it,
Okay.
and how'd you get into it?
Okay, so Lotso Design is where I make handmade miniature doors and facades. Mainly replicas off of iconic movies. So I do mostly iconic doors like Jurassic Park, which I have examples here to show.
Yeah, no, show it,
Um,
definitely.
okay,
Yeah, I would love to see it.
here. Okay, here. Okay, the sun is coming in right at a perfect glare.
Oh yeah, I can see it. That's
Here's
awesome.
Jurassic Park. Oh, and it lights up the little sconces, if you can see that in
Oh
there.
yeah, yeah.
I also, let's see, this is one of my favorites. This is Labyrinth
Oh okay. Yeah.
and Little Knockers. So those are just some of the iconic doors. I've got the
Mm-hmm.
big end ones behind me. Um, and this goes way back to being obsessed with Lord of the Rings. And all of the special features, because I've been a behind the scenes girl for forever. So I would watch the special features over and over and over again. And it was really the bigatures that they do, the miniatures that they made for these movies was just incredible. And I always wanted to work for Weta Workshops. So that's how I got into scenic design, because I wanted to just create worlds. Um, and that's also why I really love Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
But so that's where it started, and then I went to school for scenic design. And while I was doing that, I had to make a lot of models of my shows for the stage. So they're all like 1/4 inch models of my sets to give to the director to work with. And I always loved model making. And then due to the pandemic, theater was out the window because it just didn't exist for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So this was my way to take my creative energy and do something that I really love, and I love nerd things. I love anything related to that. I always have, and I have so much fun making them. And I chose doors, mainly because they're just they're super iconic. I don't do drawings or people. I really work in 3D, and when you look at them, you really know what they are, and which movie they come from or which television show, and so that's kind of how it all began, and that's how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, there's one thing I kind of want to talk about, and it's really strange. And D&D has this in it, so I love it. But
Hmm.
there's something like super cool about something in miniature scale. And
Hmm.
it's like when you have like say you have your Jurassic Park thing on a bookshelf or on a wall, it's like almost like, man, if I just open that little door, is there a whole little world in there? Um,
Yeah.
you see those on Pinterest, you see those on TikTok. Some people like have like a little door and they open it. It's like a whole Lego room inside. Why is that?
Hmm.
Why is that so cool? Like I think it's amazing.
Oh, I don't know why miniatures are just the coolest. I think just people like tiny things. I think it's just an inherent thing. Human beings just really enjoy tiny things, but it's very nostalgic. I don't know if it's nostalgic of childhood or what, but my doors, you look at the Jurassic Park gate and you have nostalgia of watching that with your parents, or just watching it over and over again, and and things. So I just love miniatures. I don't know exactly what draws people to it, but they're just really cute.
They are. There's like a I don't know how you put it. There's like a team Jacob and a team Edward when it comes to
Sure.
miniature maps and things like that in D and D. And there's a group, and I'm not hating on them, first of all, but
Uh
there's a
huh.
group who's just like theater of the mind. I don't really want miniatures. I can't do that. I can't do that. Like for me,
No.
I literally like you can ask my wife. I handcraft the maps. Like it's nothing like what you have. It's not. But I have to have custom things, custom rock, custom boulders, custom trees. I have to make it. I really want a fog machine to come in. I like to make the scene as best as I can. So naturally, when I saw your stuff, I remember like within like however fast the brain can process the thought is how fast. When I saw your designs and stuff, I was like, these need to be in D. These need to be in miniature in D&D. Like they need to be doorways. That's the first thing I thought of because there's 3D minis and I have to have them printed and I have to paint them myself, or I have to go to Dwarven Forge. And Dwarven Forge,
Yep.
Dwarven Forge, I'm not gonna say they're expensive because they're worth the price. But the second thing is, it's like Dwarven Forge and Dungeon Tiles, like the only two people making that high of quality. So everyone kind of has
Right.
it. You know what I mean? So
Right.
the first thing I thought of when I saw your stuff is I was like, this is like right in. This is like something I would like to see more of it. Like I love your doors, I love everything. But like instantly, I was like, man, there's something here where I feel like you can make things for D&D and people would buy it.
Yeah, you said like make doors based on terrain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes. Speaking of, I made this one just for this moment.
Whoa.
Here's one. Oh, wait. Okay, the sun is just so in my way. Let's see. Can you see this?
Yeah, that is amazing. Wow.
It's a Dungeons and Dragons themed door. Because what's more iconic? Because you can't get through them.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a little lock, and then it says party proof because again, you can't make it through. But I made this one, and it lights up. This one's pretty big. This one goes in like the other thing, but I could totally
Downscale that.
make smaller ones.
Is that a
Yeah,
one?
totally.
Is that a one for one piece, or are you gonna start selling that on Etsy?
No, I'm gonna start selling this one on Etsy.
There you go.
So it'll be up next weekend.
Awesome. That is so cool. That's like literally. I can't believe you made that. That's literally exactly what I was talking about. Because
Yeah.
you have to make. You can use something called skinny minis, which is a picture, and it's in resin, and it's cool. Like they're like little pieces. They're cool. Or you have to have a full scale, like uh, like wall terrain thing. And like I said, everyone has the walls and terrains out there. So like you're
Yeah.
doing something new and yours is like way more detail, way more high quality. I think you should I think after this
All right.
you should
I'm
start
gonna
doing
do it.
more of it. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just ordered my first figurine. Again, I'm just getting ready for that game I'm gonna play in the
Yeah.
future. But I ordered my first little figurine. So when she gets here, I will scale the door to the correct size for that. And then yeah, do map doors. I could do I could do mostly doors and some other things as
I
well.
mean, I
So
think you could do doors, you can do walls. Walls is like what people don't
you do
understand
walls.
in D&D is when they're making stuff is walls is the biggest hurdle as a dungeon master. Making the mat is super easy. Making rocks, making trees, it's all super easy. Making walls
Mm-hmm.
is a hurdle. I think you would do really well just making just like it's like a 3D wall like you're doing. Like your stuff stands up obviously. So you just keep doing
Mm-hmm.
that over and over. I think you could do that. Pillars like rock pillars, like
Yes.
there's a bunch of stuff you could do. That would be amazing. But as soon as I saw your art, I was like, oh, this is like, it just clicked right away. Like this has to be in D&D because it's the thing in between like the Forge sets and like skinny minis. It's like the thing
Yes.
that I think you need. Um, so let's talk about your character because you said you've created one.
Oh, okay. Sure.
How did that creation process go? And what's going through your mind is like, okay, I want to play this character. What's going through your mind when you're picking the character, and what are you going to be? Racing class.
Okay. Well, I wanted to start off not with a spellcaster. Just not that I don't have other spellcasters in mind because I do. Like honestly, really, I've created like 5 to 6 characters. Because it's really fun and again, super creative uh and each one. I think the thing too is like each character takes on a different you know part of your personality. So for me, it was just really fun to like, which one do I want to do? But the first one, so the mini that I'm getting, she is a human um, fighter. I chose fighter because I've been super inspired by Orem, and then I'm watching the first season of Critical Role, so knowing how many shots Percy can take
Yeah.
So I was like, sure, why not? Also, I was like, what do I like the most right now, or of my background or whatever? And I absolutely love Vikings. I always have, always will. My logo is, a Nordic symbol. So I really wanted to go in that direction. So she's very two weapon wielding, hand axes, um, and I chose red hair like myself. um, and yeah, so that is, and her name is Stiora.
Yora, that's awesome.
Stiora.
Oh, Theora, sorry. Um,
No, Stiorra. Stiora.
Stiora. Jeez,
Yes.
I can't speak.
If you watch The Last Kingdom, it's from that.
Okay,
But
I
I really like
haven't.
that name.
There's two things I was gonna say. One, have you seen The Northman?
Not yet. Not yet. It's on the list. I
Yeah.
can't believe, I know. I'm a huge Vikings fan and I have not seen it. I've seen most of Vikings, and I've seen all of The Last Kingdom, which is an excellent show. It's one of my favorite shows ever.
You know,
Um,
I've never seen The Viking, but like now that you say that, the lead actress in it, you look strikingly similar to her.
to Lagatha, right? Isn't that her name in Vikings?
Probably.
I think that's her name.
Okay, yeah. I've only seen like clips of it, but like as soon as you said that, I was like, hey, you kind of look like her. Um,
Yeah, my friend, I always say that I come from Nordic, Scandinavian descent, obviously with the fair skin and hair and everything. So, um, yeah, so I just took that inspo and put that into a character.
yeah.
And she's a lot more confident and just she's a lot more confident than I am, which is great.
Well, that's surprising because I mean, obviously, you're out there. Um, you're taking your stuff to the fan expo where you're meeting people, talking to people. That's like a social. That's a social thing that not pretty outgoing people would do. Let's talk about that process for a second. Because you're in Washington D.C. That's where you're from originally, correct?
Yes, that's where I currently live. I'm from Wisconsin, the
Oh, okay.
Milwaukee area, like growing up and
Yeah.
such. But I live in Washington D.C.
Okay. So, how do you end up in Fan Expo Chicago? Are you just con hopping, for lack of a better term?
Yes, I was con hopping. So I did Awesome Con in DC. And then because my family lives here in Milwaukee, I decided to kind of like a Midwest tour. So I looked at a bunch of cons that were in the Midwest. So I did Fan Expo Chicago, and then I went down to St. Louis, and then I have one coming up in Madison. So I'm spending like about 3 months here at home.
Okay. So, what's your experience been with the cons?
Um, Good. Awesome Con was really great. Um, it went super well. Fan Expo Chicago for me as a seller was slower, and a little bit harder. And I think everything depends on where they put you, where the crowd flow is, um, and if people are buying or not. I noticed that in Chicago, a lot more people weren't
Yeah.
um, buying, whereas in DC they just were. But I think
Yeah.
that could be the culture of DC.
Mm-hmm.
um, um, and then I did pretty well in St. Louis. So, but Chicago, since it was 4 days, I think people spread their buying over 4 days or wait till the very end,
Yeah.
especially if they're there for all 4 days.
So we got with some of the creators or people who were selling stuff in the artist alley, I think is what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
everyone, and it was strange because the artist alley where I got all my stuff basically, was like popping for us and with RPD. We were like loving. We kept going back there. We kept bringing our friends back there. We kept talking to everybody in that area. Knew everyone in that area knew about D&D, but all the people the sellers there, all the vendors, for lack of a better term, they all said they hated the idea that an artist alley was separate from the regular floor. Was that your experience too?
Yes, at Fan Expo, it was really hard to, like, some artists made it onto that main floor, But most of the artists were back in that like corner. And a lot of them, now I got lucky that my row was on the way to the snacks. Um, so I had pretty good position even back there. But I know that some artists just like packed up and left and didn't come back on Sunday. Just
Okay.
because people weren't making it back that far. Because I think, a lot of people, there's the pull towards the like the exhibitors area,
Mm-hmm.
which took up a lot of that main floor area,
Mm-hmm.
and then um there just wasn't good traffic back to the right, area.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone said that we talked to that was back there, but um, we stayed back there for most of the 3. We stayed there for 3 days, and we were back there. I don't know, probably 6 hours total, just hanging out with people and talking to people. Um, so when you created your character,
Mhm.
some people always say like it's either completely different from yourself or it's a piece of yourself that you don't show, and you're putting it into the game. What'd you do? Did you create someone? You said they were more outgoing. Was that something you would like to be, or how did you create your character?
I definitely would have to, if especially if, because I haven't played, and for my first time playing, I would actually want to play somebody a little bit closer to myself. Um, just because I'm not confident in role playing. Um, and so if I can think as myself generally, then but with the more fighter attitude and Viking attitude that I've seen on television,
Yeah.
sure, I can do that. So that's how I created her. And I do think like in each character that I have created, I definitely push for one aspect of my personality that I, don't usually, you know,
Yeah, you don't
use
protrude. Yeah.
or because it's a place. I think it's a place that you can be super confident, or a place you can be um rude and sassy. I don't know, like, or
Yeah.
just not polite. you know I'm
Yeah.
like, I feel like I'm polite all the time, so
Yeah.
you know what, Fiora, we're not going to be polite, okay? We're just going to do the complete opposite. you
Yeah.
know
We just started a couples campaign where I'm DMing, but I have 4 women and 4 guys.
hmm
And it was funny like how much the women went like off the rails during the first session, where it's like, oh, these guys are gonna be just like straight up barbarians, or they played a lot, they're gonna do this, and like all the women are like, they're just like, shoot that guy in the dick, we're gonna kill that person, we're stealing these pearls, we're messing stuff up. So it was really funny to see like that outlet for all the female players in our group, and it was honestly debauchery personified.
yes, and I think that is where I would also go. So, because like a lot of trader characters I have in mind are like tricksters, they steal things,
Yeah,
they're saucy, like,
yeah,
just like totally not what I can do in my everyday life. So, might as well steal things and trick people in D&D.
absolutely. What is your schedule like right now?
Um, my next week is pretty busy, but it's pretty flexible, especially when it comes to like September. I don't have a lot going on
It's really
because I'm
funny.
just here for another month.
Really funny you mentioned that. Um, so this is kind of breaking news for everybody who's doesn't know, but we have a bunch of in-home, like in-person campaigns. We're starting our online campaign. We're looking for players right now. Emily, you're more than welcome to jump on if you want. But for those around and probably September 1st, after October, we're going to start an online campaign. So if you ever wanted to play your character in our campaign, think about it. Um,
Okay.
a lot of sassiness, a lot of sassiness. Um,
I can
so
bring it.
that's awesome. So far, I don't know if you saw, she was with us at the Fan Expo, another TikToker, D&D Nerd Girl Chair. She's going to be with us. Um, one of the guys with me, Chris, that you've probably been talking to, he's gonna DM it, which
Yep,
is awesome because I'm like the forever DM, so I get to play, which is
that's
cool.
great.
So everyone saw it here first. Emily will 100% play with us. We're not taking no for an answer.
All right, that sounds good. I probably will.
Good. We'll be
You
in
all have
contact.
been so lovely. I just like your community is so welcoming, and I just, would be glad to join in wherever I can.
That sounds awesome until we're like drunk in a tavern, creating the total mayhem, and then you're gonna be like, "What did I sign up for?"
Nope, and I'm gonna be on the tabletop and drinking beer too,
That's,
so it'll be great.
that sounds great. Um, so looking at doing the whole con thing and doing the whole travel con situation, are you still are you still doing designs for theaters? Because kind of COVID's laying back. Are you back in that scene? It sounds like you're traveling. You have a lot of stuff right now. You're at your original house, kind of going in between cons and whatnot. So, what has your experience been con hopping, and are you going back to the theater scene?
Good question. Yes, I'm back in the theater world. Luckily, I'm a freelancer, so the amazing thing is that I can be anywhere to design. I only have to be in the theater to do Tech Week, which is only a week before opening. So I'm designing some shows here while I'm in Wisconsin. And then so I have a show. I'm not doing as many, to be honest. I'm really, really loving my art. And I love traveling around and meeting people. I actually, for someone who is an introvert and doesn't love talking to people, I actually really do enjoy talking to people at the
Yeah.
conventions because you're talking about something you're both very passionate about
Mm-hmm.
and excited to share. So it makes it very easy. So I have a show coming up in December and then another one in the spring currently. But my theater load has it uh I got a bunch of shows like right after COVID kind of slowed down. And but it's still a little slow in the theater world. Um just slightly slow. But I've definitely leaned more towards my art and then being more choosy and more specific about who I want to work with in the theater world.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
This the sun is chasing me, so
yeah, no, move as much as you want.
oh, you're good.
It's interesting. You talked about you kind of mentioned it was kind of interesting that you're an introvert, but then when it comes to certain things like talking about a product or talking about nerd culture, you want to talk about it. I've always felt the same way. It's weird. Like when someone says, "Hey, do you want to go have like a dinner party?" And I'm like, "Okay, what are we doing?" We're just sitting around talking. I'm like, that sounds like the worst thing I could ever do. Period. But if someone's like, "Let's go play D&D with the same exact people in the same exact setting," and there's like something to do, I'm like, that sounds super cool. But the only thing that's changed is
Exactly.
like, is there's like something involved where we can like bond over it. I don't even know how to describe it, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. Over a
Um,
shared interest is a lot easier. Otherwise, I'm not very social.
yeah, it's like weird getting to know people if you're just, even though it's funny we're just talking right now, but like again it has to do with nerd culture, but it's weird to just like talk to someone without like an objective or like a topic, or
Mhm.
it's really strange.
Yeah, I have to say, I was totally like not nervous for this at all, which is very odd for me. But I was like, oh yeah, we're just gonna talk about things that I like. Okay, great. You
Yeah,
know? I was like,
exactly,
that's great.
exactly. So you said you're being selective with who you work with.
Mhm.
What does that mean?
Um, I think in the theater industry, you get I mean, there's many different theaters that you can work with and companies and things like that. But when you're in it long enough, which I've been graduated for ooh, 3, 4 years now. I mean, there was a pandemic in the middle of it, but from going and doing every single show I was offered, um, I just learned about people, about the theater company they work for, and the stories they tell. So now I work with people that I really enjoy working with, because it can get a little difficult in the theater industry, um, with personalities.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Hmm.
Um, but it's really like about, who I just am more selective, and the stories that they tell. So, I work mainly actually with this theater. They're called Art Centric, and they're in Baltimore. And it's a African American theater run company. And to me, that's very important. And those are the folks that I want to work with, and they're telling the stories that I want to tell. Because to me, that is what is important and will be fulfilling, um, for me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And it's kind of weird. There's another one of our friends. His name is Andy, Mr. Andy DM on TikTok, and he's a actor out of Chicago, and he called them theater houses. I don't know if that's a common term, but the theater houses in Chicago all closed down due to COVID. So he jumped
Mhm.
on his TikTok in D&D strictly because of that as well. And it's super interesting because the theater scene individuals, people who are entertainers or super creative like yourself, they seem to latch on to Dungeons and Dragons. Um, do you think that's because it's just like a good way to express creativity?
Think so, and I think it's a way that there aren't any boundaries. Really. I
Yeah,
mean, like, sure, like the DM can create some boundaries, but honestly, really, there's none.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, your creative brain can go wherever it wants to go. And even within a theater, you still have a script and you have a story to tell, and it's very specific. Whereas Dungeons and Dragons, you are on an epic adventure. You can go to strange realms that are either like underwater or on the moon. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I mean, it can be anywhere. Also, it doesn't even have to be in medieval ish times.
Mhm.
It could be a Jurassic Park themed Dungeons and Dragons or something else. So it what it's done for me is also something from watching Critical Role is it just starts my brain like super pumping creativity, and then it's made my dreams incredibly vivid.
Really?
Like for some reason it just really set off, like I started having the craziest, most epic, like super vivid dreams due to listening to Critical Role, doing to just diving in and starting to really to dream up worlds or dream up ideas that I have.
Wow.
Mhm.
So are you having D&D dreams like with Dungeons and Dragons, or just your dreams in general?
Well, in general, I generally have pretty epic dreams. So they're not Dungeons and Dragons themed necessarily, but like there's one where I don't know, I'm like the savior of a lost city on the back of a dragon, and I was like, well, that could be a really good concept for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I was like, that would be really cool. But that's the type of dreaming
Wow, that's like
that I.
you might be the most epic dreamer I've heard of. I wonder if it's like
Oh
some
yeah,
Viking heritage that has like epic dreams.
maybe, could be. I
You
just always have. They're super vivid. I've always had crazy epic dreams, adventure dreams.
you know what? The coolest part about DMing is stealing Matt
Mhm.
Mercer's dream scenes. Um,
Yes.
the art of the dream sessions in D&D is like the coolest, almost the coolest part in D&D.
Mhm.
We had
There.
this. Go ahead.
Go
Sorry.
ahead. No, no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say that we had a new player this last session. It was her very first time playing ever, and she gave me a very heart wrenching backstory. And I decided on her very first session ever, she falls asleep. She's a cleric. She has a dream about her sister
Mhm.
dying, and I'm just playing out this dream like, you're not gonna let me die, are you? And it's like her dream, and everyone gets to see it, but she's just like, holy shit, this is what a dream is in D&D. It's like, yeah, they're pretty intense. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, and they always. I mean, they're super vivid, and like super descriptive, and also sometimes super terrifying. So, or there's some haunting element to dreams, And I love that idea. I've always loved dreams in general and ideas about them and why, what they mean and things like that. So I
Yeah,
love seeing them come to life in Critical Role and in stories in general.
yeah, yeah. I tend to agree with you. I think dreams are super cool. Plus, they're like a good
Mhm.
lubricant for like the sleeping session of D&D where it's so boring. Like, actually, it's the most
Right.
fun part. So it's
Right.
pretty cool.
Because also one of the highlights is then like the person who, because especially in Critical Role when Matt just turns and goes, Imogen, and her face just goes, "Oh no,"
Yeah, yeah,
and you just start to see her sweat and panic and everything. So that's one of my favorite moments is when he catches them off guard.
yeah.
Like I can't have one night of good sleep. Come on.
Yeah, and it's funny because you'll see like Travis's face. Oh, it's like always the same. He like looks at everybody's like, oh, he's really excited. Um,
I know
Super
because
fun.
he had to go through it with the Mighty Nine constantly.
Oh yes,
So
he did.
he's like, it's your turn.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think for that one, he even had everybody leave the table for Ford's first couple dreams.
Mhm.
So it's like, holy shit,
Mhm.
what's going on here? And then they do the dream, they come back in like, what happened? And the whole audience knows it was super epic. Um,
Yeah, it makes sense, especially for him as a warlock. I
yeah.
think that for everybody to leave the table, um, so that they don't have any idea of who's in their head, type of thing.
Yeah.
So
Matt Mercer is the GOAT. I always talk about it all the time. Matt Mercer is so good. He has so many things that he does in the game that are just like, man, how do you think of such creative ways to make it so enticing? And he is literally the best at ending a session on a cliffhanger.
oh yes, and I hate it every time.
No, you just want to keep playing. Yeah, it's so fun.
I'm like, now I have to wait a week. Come on. Now
Uh,
I have to wait a week because I'm
you're
caught up.
caught up.
So
Yeah,
so I like legit have to wait a week. I mean, I'm watching campaign 1 right now, so I don't have to wait a week for those,
yeah.
but I'm about to be finished with that, and I'm like, "What do I do next?
You know,
Do I just start campaign 2 over again? Sure."
I've thought about it because I haven't watched campaign one. I know what happens because I've seen the ending. I know everything that happens,
Mhm.
but I haven't watched campaign one because I got into D&D in Washington D.C., which is crazy enough. Um,
That's crazy.
it is. Myself, Cisco, and Chris, all the ones you met at the Fan Expo, we all met
Mhm.
each other because we were in the National Guard together, and we went to Washington D.C. for a detachment for 9 months, and that's where we all started playing D&D together. Um, and so I started watching Critical Role at that time where campaign two was going on. So I just started
Mhm.
campaign two, not campaign one. But I finished campaign two and I sat like in my chair for like an hour, like after it was over, the finale's over, and I'm just like, oh, it's over. That's all that 114 episodes. I have this big like knot in my stomach because I just have you seen all of campaign two?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll talk about it. So everything
Spoiler
that
alert.
yeah, spoiler alert for everybody because I love campaign two. But after seeing Caleb Widowgast's story
Mhm.
about his parents and he could have saved them and done this whole thing with Dunamancy and he chooses not to because in the after show, Matt Mercer was saying I gave him the choice. I went into this saying if he did everything right, he could go back in time and we could play that out, and he chose not
Mhm.
to. um, I was crying, and like afterwards, I was like, "Gosh, dude!" Like I had a hole in my stomach for a week, and then campaign three started, and for the first like 10 episodes of campaign three, I was like, "I cannot do it! I cannot do it!" And then finally, after like 11, 12, 13, I was like, "Okay." And now I really love Orem. I obviously FCG's coolest, and they're all really cool. Laudena's my favorite, probably. Um,
Yeah.
so, but
I love campaign 3. They're all a bunch of misfits and super chaotic souls, and I love them.
yeah, it is cool. But I had this hole in my chest, this like show hole for like a week where I was like, oh my gosh, the story is over. The Nonagon, everything happened. It's crazy. Um,
Yeah, I
okay.
remember definitely freaking out when it was over. Or I
Yeah.
mean, I knew I could continue to watch campaign 3, but I definitely with my best friend was like, "What do I do?" Like I also like this happened and this happened. I do recaps for her. So she knows quite a lot about Critical Role, but she doesn't watch it, but she knows quite a lot due
It's
to me
it
giving recaps.
It's literally like the weird thing about Dungeons and Dragons or Critical Role, because they go hand in hand, is like trying to explain them to a civilian who doesn't, watch it or play D&D is like nearly impossible, right? It's like I can't explain to you why it's so awesome that Ford slept with Avantika. I can't explain it to you, but I'm telling you, it was the coolest, Or like
crazy. That was crazy.
It was super crazy. Or like just Henry Crabgrass.
And he did it. Didn't he do it without Laura? Wasn't there that episode either, and I remember that.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, I wish she was there.
she wasn't there, and then she came back, and she's like, Ford, I saw you were like coming back late. What was that all about? And she was like totally like mad at Avantika for like 3 days or something. That was very funny.
Yeah, so funny. And Henry Crabgrass, oh my gosh.
I literally...
he just pulled that out of nowhere.
It blows my mind because she just picks up grass. She's like, I'm going to try communing with the grass. And he's like, hey, I'm Henry Crabgrass. I lost it, dude. I lost it, and then the next day I got to show my wife, and we replayed it like 10 times. That just goes to show you how good Matt Mercer is, because out of nowhere, he comes up with the best NPC I've ever heard of, and I'm dying laughing.
That you'll never forget. And then you make these references outside in the real world, and people look at you strange, but you know it's cool.
Yeah. Do you know what's cool is 2 rows down from your booth, they had like a table where they did know about D&D, and they were giving out D&D stickers if you rolled if you played rollers with them and won. But I bought a Kiri. I don't know if you remember Kiri from Campaign 2.
Yeah, of course.
I got a sticker, and it's Kiri, and it says, go fuck yourself. And I put it on my DM screen.
I was literally just about to quote that. Go fuck yourself.
Yes. Kiri's the coolest.
Yes.
We could talk about Critical Role all day. And for those of you who don't watch Critical Role, start watching it. I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to talk about it as much as I can with people.
My advice is to start with Campaign 2.
Yeah, I always say the same thing. That's my advice. Yeah, I say the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think the reason I think that is, one, Campaign 1, the production wasn't 100% there yet. And then Ori and Akaba's in the first like 27 episodes. I'm not a huge fan of Tiberius, even though I like Tiberius the character, but...
No, I skipped those episodes. I skipped to the Briarwood arc, mainly because I knew the Briarwood arc from the show.
Yeah.
But I couldn't stand it, and I just was like, nope, next. So I'd say you can totally do it, viewers. You can totally skip to episode 24. But it's been really interesting watching Campaign 2 and 3 and then going back to Campaign 1. It is very fun to see them like learn how this all works, learn how to play together, and you can see how much they've grown by Campaign 2. And I like starting a story from the beginning, them meeting in a tavern, that was worth it to start there.
It was cool, but I think there's a few good things with there's a few, like, if I should get a D&D, what should I start to watch first? Stranger Things is one of them. Obviously, it gets people in there. I'm pretty interested in the thing you just showed, this play you just told me about, because I feel like after I watch this, that's another thing I'm going to say. If you want to get into D&D, you got to watch this. But the Campaign 2 is amazing because they just finished this huge thing with Vecna and everything in Campaign 1, where they had this huge meteoric rise, and all of a sudden it's over, and they're going to start the next campaign. So when you watch Campaign 2, Episode 1, there's so much energy in that episode. Especially when they start doing, like, their voices for the first time, and not the Brave is like, I'm Little Goblin Girl. Like, oh yeah, you better believe I'm playing a Little Goblin Girl.
Yeah. Also, Sam started with an accent, and that quickly, went away. But he tried. He tried for a hot second.
Yeah. If you go back and watch Campaign 2, and then you go back to Episode 1, which that's what I did. Honestly, I watched Campaign 2, and after those first few days, I was like, I just want to go back and watch the first episode again. So
I did the same thing.
Did you really? Okay.
Yes, because you want to know where they started.
Exactly. Yeah, you get me.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. Me and my wife sat down and we watched it again, and it was like I still have the emotions of all of campaign 2, the Nonagon and Caleb, but also I went back and watched, like, all their accents are different, which is hilarious.
Yes, I mainly watch, like, when I'm going to bed, I mainly watch recaps from campaign 2, like just the funny moments, like just moments I really liked, and I just
Yeah.
get a lot of joy out of watching just random 5-minute episodes from that whole campaign.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're gonna do other things in life, and they're gonna retire, do whatever they got to do. Obviously, they're gonna do all their shows and everything first, so I'm really excited about that. But I think when we look back, 20 years from now, which is super weird to think about, when we look back on Critical Role 20 years from now, I'm gonna be thinking like, wow, how special was that show? Because it's so much content and it's so much that happens that if you're into it, like you feel like you were with them through 114 or 500 episodes, however many you watch, but you're with them through every single death or Avantika or Henry Crabgrass or what's that city called? City with all the drow in it. I can't remember now. Um,
And Jorhaus.
yeah, Jorhaus, the Jorhaus, and
the Jorhaus.
yeah, and the wizard that flies. I'm kind of losing my mind now. I can't think of everybody.
Trent Ickathon. Ickython is the correct way to say that.
There's Trent Ickython, but also
and Essex.
Essex, that's the one. Yeah.
Essex Bayless. Yes, I might be obsessed with him and Caleb. I'm into the ships.
Yeah.
I like that.
There was one moment, and viewers, I don't even care anymore. I'm going to talk about Critical Role all day. So there was one moment where Essex is they send Frumpkin to check on Essex because he's acting really weird, and they send him into the quarters, and they find out that he's double crossing the Bright Queen, and you're like, Essex, how could you? And then you find out the whole story, and it's really cool.
So good, such a good twist, and then Nott says, "Welcome to the Mighty Nine." And it was really epic, and I'm glad he went on that final adventure with them in AR.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But I want to end it with this because I feel like, you know what, we're gonna do another episode someday, and it's just gonna be like, let's talk about Critical Role, because
I love it. I can talk about it all day, every day.
Awesome, because there's me, you're a true fan, I can tell, and there's like 2 others that are like ride or die. We all have to get together, and we all have to talk about Critical Role. Period.
Okay.
So we're gonna do that. We're gonna set up a Critical Role whole episode. But
yes, and we can talk about theories for campaign 3 if you're caught up.
I'm on 18, but yes, I think I have a lot of theories so far. So we'll talk about it. But I'd like to end the episode, the podcast, with what do you see yourself and where do you see yourself with D&D in 5, 10, and 15 years?
Ooh. Well, I hope to be playing it a lot. Whether that I'd like to get, like my friend group together to play it, and then share it with my niece and my nephews. I would love. I mean, they're only like 5 and 2, but
yeah,
eventually,
yeah,
I would love to play with them and get them excited about it and get their friends to join in. And I know my brother would totally be into that too. So, because he's very excited. And we actually just got my niece her first dice set. So we're already, putting the seeds for the future. But that is what I would love to happen with Dungeons and Dragons in my life.
That's awesome. That's what it's all about, playing with people and having adventures. So your family it goes hand in hand. So I just want to say thanks for coming on the podcast. It was a great time. For anyone who wants to follow you or wants to hire you to be an interior designer in your next dungeon, where do they find you? Where can they get more of you? And where can they buy all the new dungeon tiles and stuff you're going to be making in the future?
Okay, well, you can find me on Instagram at Lotzo Design, and it's LOTZ, because that's my last name. O Design. And then honestly, you can find me anywhere with that name, and all of my stuff is for sale on Etsy. And my Etsy shop is also called Lotso Design. But those are the 2 places where you can see my work and see me and what I'm up to.
Awesome. Yeah, check her out. Also, whenever we get our dungeon made, I will give her a shout out, and everyone's gonna hire her to do their home dungeons. But otherwise, thanks everyone. Thanks Emily for showing up. And then next time we do this, it's gonna be it's gonna be a Critical Role panel. So be excited for that in the future. Otherwise, everyone, we will